And we are live. I think we're live. Yeah. Okay. Let me just pop out the chat here. Been having a very lively chat with everybody pre-stream. My favourite kinds of chats. We would say crazy stuff that's probably shouldn't appear in public. And today we're back in the laboratory to talk about Dungeons and Dragons science. Not a dog. Hello. Hello, everybody. Sir William, Lysander, James, Ralph, Moondog, Juju Bear, Adrianath, Justin, Sky, Rick, Not a Dog. Hello, everyone. And hello to everyone who was chatting with me before the stream but couldn't make it because they're off on their way to work. It's an early stream. Hey, Zachary. The Horn King. Nice to see you. Robert. Voices from the Dark. Got some old school chatters in here. Hello to Finland. Amada Man. Moondog and Moonring. Oh. Bree is good. She's racing around outside destroying things at the moment. She was snuggling up to me this morning because she's discovering winter. It's her first ever winter because she's not even a year old. So she's never experienced winter before. And she's like, why is it wet all the time and cold all the time? I don't like this. I'm going to hide inside your shirt. Hey, Rick. You've got a big question there, Rick. The premise being, if either side was about to win the Blood War, Io could rupture the connection between the Abyss and Bartle by splitting the river Styx. Ooh. Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. Like, Bartor seems to have been a reclaimed plane of existence. Kind of like Eberron almost fell into the Abyss at some point. That's how I interpret it anyway. And they brought it back by basically banishing the Demon Lords by sacrificing the Coatl and pulled that world back into its own sort of demi-plane. And presumably back into the phlogiston at some point. I don't know. But they seem to have changed around. Like the changes to Eberron dwarf the changes to faerun, for instance. You got distracted by creating mermaids. What's that, Emiliano? What's so wild, AJ? I didn't Bluetooth was a rune. Oh, Bluetooth, yeah. Well, Bluetooth is named after a particular individual from history. He's a Viking. Hey, Dubai. Thanks, Elsie. Hey, David. Brain cell. When am I going to dive into more demons? Pretty soon, actually. There's a few more that I need to cover. I've been looking at the Crown Wars. That's been my main research. This week, I've really only put out one 8-minute long video, although I thought it was a pretty good one, because I've really been having to do a lot of stuff to get ready for the Kickstarter for releasing the battle mats and things. So these puppies have had promo images and stuff, and I've been using learning photography to do the stuff and getting all of the data and the price sheets and everything correct and liaising with the companies that are involved in all the production. So it's been really a lot of work in the background. And unfortunately that means I've not been in the headspace to sit down and spend an entire day making a video. Was he the first king of Denmark? Probably was. So today we're talking about the Unearthed Arcana, which I think is the best Unearthed Arcana that I have seen from D&D for a while, from Wizards of the Coast for a while. I think the last Feywild one was kind of lame, but this Dragonborn one is actually pretty good. And they've got new spells, including a Fizzban-themed spell, named spell, so that's Dragonlance, and they've also got Icing Death themed spell, which is unlikely considering white dragons aren't known for their arcane lore or the fact that they would pass on information around the realms to make a spell that everybody knows so well with them that they would put their name on it. So I'm like, Wizards of the Coast, you don't really get why spells are named certain ways, do you? Like, not in the lore. I mean, it's fine to call it an Icing Death spell, but really? Icing Death? Nah. He was just a big white dragon down near Icewind Dale. That's it. He wasn't famous, you know. He's famous because a couple of humanoids that killed him happened to be famous. But even then. No, I don't think it means a Dragonlance book, but I think we are going to see a Dragonlance book at some point because of the novel series which is coming out and because of all of the publicity around Dragonlance, really. And I think it would be unwise of them not to give us some sort of a Dragonlance supplement. It would probably be a Dragonlance Adventures type book, which is mainly just using existing sort of mechanics and monsters and things to bring us some Dragonlance lore, so that if you wanted to set some games, kind of like a Mystic Odyssey of Theros book, where it's not like a fully massively fleshed out world setting and things, and doesn't bring us all of the lore of Dragonlance, because the lore of Dragonlance is actually a little bit controversial. There's a lot of people who are upset with the direction that Dragonlance went in some of the later books. So which way do you go? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, if you're Wizards of the Coast. If you follow the existing lore and go and head off from the timeline where the Dragonlance ended off at, then you're screwed, because you're going to alienate all the people who fell in love with the original Dragonlance books and loved the original Dragonlance, not the later stages. And if you go back and retcon all of that, you piss off all the people who followed along and were happy with the modern Dragonlance. So what do? You just, if I was them, I would ignore all the existing lore of Dragonlance and say, well, we're just going to make our own Dragonlance, and all the stuff that happens in the books isn't going to get mentioned at all. And it's like, well, how do you separate the world of Dragonlance from the lore? Tricky, isn't it? Tricky. Because really, you've got to make Dragonlance appealing to the wider audience of D&D. They need to sell these books. And they can't just sell these books based on nostalgia, because that doesn't work. I think the dragon transformation is a little bit high level. 7th level is a bit high level just for that sort of thing. They could have toned it down a little bit, considering that the abilities are so nerfed in the spell. Like, you know, you get these mystical wings that appear and stuff. You're not really transforming. I mean, you could polymorph into a dragon, for goodness sakes. I'm thinking about it, Denny. Like, I'm looking into the Erda. And the last Dragonlance video that I did it did okay in the end. Like, it got the views that I was hoping it would get in the end. It was a lot of work, and it was an interesting reference, and it's probably going to pay off over the long run. But doing like more specific Dragonlance stuff isn't really going to benefit my channel very well, I'm afraid. I do a lot of service videos for people where I bring, you know, obscure monsters and things and talk about lore that they want me to talk about. But sometimes I've just got to go, yeah, you know what? That's going to be a huge time sink for me. So I'll look into it, but I don't know if it's going to be that popular talking about the Erda. Because they're not hugely important to the greater scheme of Dragonlance, really. And I'm not going to make a video on Gully Dwarfs, because I really hated the Gully Dwarfs. Just me personally, I have the same reaction to Gully Dwarfs as some other people have to Kenda. It's just personal bias. Thanks, Kamuknuk. Speaking of Dragonlance, have you seen the early 2000s Dragonlance TV movie with terrible CGI? Not the CGI one. I've seen the animated one. I don't think I've seen a CGI one. No. No, I have not. The 1 minute flight time for Gem Dragonborn is lame. Yeah, but giving them any sort of flight at all is kind of controversial at first level. You know, do they get that at first level, or does that unlock later on? I liked the mechanic back in 3rd edition where they gave unlockable racial feats. So you would get this package of feats that you can take instead of, you know, leveling up your attributes. You just take these racial feats which unlock your racial powers. I quite like that mechanic, and I think they should bring that back, and it was perfectly workable. Yeah, it's like that, Matthias. It is, yeah, everybody loses their shit when something decent and juicy comes along. Like, we're all invested in Dragonborn suddenly. Like, a lot of people are like, I can take them or leave them, but as soon as we get something that we can see a lot of people using in the game, we like get personally invested. It's like, oh, this is going to encroach on my DMing, I'm sure. Gully Dwarf are kind of like these... how would you describe Gully Dwarf in a non-derogatory fashion? Stupid, regressed, insular, inbred, diseased, pathetic dwarves. Yeah. Pester and Roper. Yeah, Gully Dwarves are not PC at all. Yeah, some people you know that they can play a Kender well, and some people you just like, you're never ever going to play a Kender at my table. No way. You just know. And that really is what it comes down to. You can't just write Kender off completely out of hand. You have to look at your players at your table, your friends, essentially. You know which of your friends are going to play Kender responsibly. So, in that case, they'll be fine. Some people, you would give them any option whatsoever. They could play anything at the table they wanted to, because you know deep down that they're gonna do it justice and roleplay responsibly and make it really fun for everyone else. You just know those people. And I think we need to acknowledge that it's perfectly fine to run any sort of character if you're the sort of person who can run a character at a table. You've got that trusted mandate from your DM to go nuts, do whatever you want. So if you're a person who finds yourself getting restricted by your DM a lot, maybe it's kind of your fault too. What did you do? What did you do in the past to poison that DM against giving you any sort of character to play? Take some responsibility. No, I don't think they're going to replace the Draconians with Dragonborn. That would be setting suicide. Have fun, Dog. Nice to see you. Well, Udon, that's probably why you should not be playing with that DM. I like the Gygax method. If in doubt, TPK. TPKs I find are not that good because you have to restart your whole... Like, as a DM, I really don't like TPKs. Killing characters is okay. That's fine. Like, when the character dies because of bad rolls and bad decisions in the game, it's usually got nothing much to do with me at all. But sometimes I've had to put my foot down and say, no, I'm not going to retcon that. This clearly was the result that was going to happen. Your choices have resulted in the death of your entire party of adventurers. And it sucks, and it's often the end of, like, a whole campaign. So, Udon, I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Neanderthals didn't... I think Neanderthals used spears. They were tool users, just like... they were quite advanced. They'll replace kobolds soon, you think? Well, kobolds used to be goblinoids, along with orcs, actually. Orcs used to be goblinoids as well. TPK, alright, next time we'll end the session here. Next time your adventurers are in hell. Ooh, I like it. That's a better idea. What do you think about Ross's Shaman class? I haven't had a look at it yet. I know that Shaman, Taryn Pounds, Indestructible Boy, did a review of it. So I'll probably go and check out that video. Sir William, I totally agree with you. Draconians are not Dragonborn. They are nothing like Dragonborn. Also, spell scales are not Dragonborn, and they're not Draconians either. But I'm still waiting for them to bring out spell scales. I think there's some homebrew stats for the Migo. There's nothing official, though. Where does Krynn sit in the danger of the abyss? I don't know. Yeah, well, it makes sense if you're a Neanderthal. Neanderthals were pretty robust, solid dudes, and they could go toe-to-toe with a lot of the animals they were hunting. They hunted megafauna, obviously, so yeah, throwing your spear is less effective at something with 1 inch hide. you want to set that spear and thrust. So yeah, they were the original hoplites, you could say. Hoplites didn't throw their spears either. They went and jabbed it straight through you. Spell scales are another form of dragon folk. They are like a naturalized half-dragon, you could say. And they are flamboyant, and they are arrogant, and they are fashionable, etc., etc. They're very interesting. They're quite unlike other types of dragon folk. Razak, what's my favourite playable race? I have played a lot more gnomes than other people that I know. So I do actually... That's okay, Rudolph. I do actually favour gnomes quite a bit. Probably more than I should. I have also played a lot of human characters and a lot of half-elven characters. I haven't played a lot of dwarven or elven characters, and I very rarely play a half-orc. Now that Dragonborn are around, I quite like Dragonborn. But I'm always like, I need to get to know the DM quite well and get that trust from the DM before I will play a Dragonborn. I don't want to be like, the first time I've ever played a game with a guy or a lady and throw a Dragonborn into their mix, because sometimes it's a little bit like, I don't know, a little bit of hesitancy because the Dragonborn can be quite overpowering. Dragon elves, yeah, a little bit. Spell scales are gorgeous. I'm actually amazed when you think about it that Crawford hasn't latched onto spell scales and is championing them through the streets. You know what I mean? They'd seem right up his alley. I could see him playing a spell scale really well. Hey Zach, thank you. If you're talking sci-fi, can you speak on Mind Flayer tech? I'm about to play a Lithid Scion telepath in an evil campaign. I love your channel, thanks. So they experiment with a lot of creatures. A good source of inspiration is a novel series called East of Eden or West of Eden, which is where the premise is that dinosaurs never died out in a mass extinction and they still exist in the modern sort of times. And there's humans as well, but humans are like slave stock, and humans live in the colder regions where the dinosaurs don't like to go. In fact, we know now that that dinosaurs lived in cold regions as well. They lived in Arctic regions and they grew feathers, which is true. They did. We've got fossil evidence of it. Anyway, that was mostly from fossils that have been uncovered from China. China's really recently opened up hugely on their fossil records and stuff. So that's been of great benefit to paleontology around the world. As for Mind Flayer tech, the reason why I mentioned that book series is because they do a lot of experimentation with living things, transforming them and mutating them into useful components. The Mind Flayers use fluids and stuff that they get from the seromorphosis process, and they use that for mutating and sustaining things as well. So they use these mutagenic fluids and stuff. Think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Secrets of the Ooze, mutant monsters, mutant animals, animals that like now have humanoid intelligence, that sort of thing. And also creatures which like vehicles and machine guns and all sorts of stuff, modern appliances that were once living creatures and are now still living creatures but have been transformed into organic machines. And there's like a few movies I can think about that that have that sort of thing, like guns that shoot teeth and stuff like that. Yeah, it's creepy stuff. It's creepy stuff, and it's really good. Hey, Rakeland. No, Neanderthals didn't develop bows, and they did get injured a lot. Yeah, it's true. From what we know of their record of the records of bones and breaks and things like that. What? Who would win in a fight, an astronaut or a Neanderthal? The Neanderthal would kick the ass of a modern human. Yeah. They would. You'd close in. You would underestimate them, because they're short and their stockings are a little bit hunched and stuff. But they'll grab you and you'd be like, oh man, you're really strong. Oh, question there. Thanks, Comic Nut. Totally off topic, but look up Pelican Spider, a real world Neogi. Ugh. No, I've seen that, and no, I don't want to look it up again. I don't know why people seem not to like gnomes. I know, right? Gnomes are cool. My gnome that I'm playing at the moment is fairly popular in my game. He's a character that I've played in other campaigns, and I really am quite comfortable in his skin. And this time I've really got a chance to play him to the fullest in a full campaign of Storm King's Thunder. No, Moonring, I'm about to go and have a look at the 5th edition Lava Child art. It got mentioned as being even worse than the original art, and I find that hard to believe. I'm going to have to go and look it up. Well, the Neanderthals were quite intelligent, but not quite as intelligent as we have become. I know, Corey. Isn't that true? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff which isn't in mainstream media yet, but there's been discovered about our past. So if you're paying attention to like paleontology and stuff like that, it's a very exciting time. Also, bioscience is just going through an amazing renaissance at the moment. Yeah, chimps are extremely strong. And it's true, we've given up a lot of our physical strength in order to expand our brain case by basically regressing to being adult size, but with more baby-like proportions. And you can see that reflected in our culture and the way that we treat physical beauty and stuff like that as more infantile traits. Like we look at, if you look at beautiful people like models and things like that, they've got more childlike features, traits, you could say. And we look at chimpanzees and we say, wow, it looks like an old person, it looks like an old man. It's true. AJ's gnome is exactly why you can't trust them. Yeah, it's true. I'll heal you. My God will heal you, but first I must ask of you what is your most treasured possession? Smash, smash, smash. I wish we were broadcasting that game, actually. It's quite good. You could say Neanderthal were the real world dwarves, yeah, in some ways. You could honestly walk past a Neanderthal on the street and you'd be like, where's that dude from? But you wouldn't think it's an alien walking next to me. Snicklegrick. Adam Power, everybody, my DM, leading us on a merry jaunt across the sky right now in a flying tower. with John Cleese and Elizabeth Hurley in a documentary called Beauty called Face. The author of David Brin had a really good article about that was quite controversial, and he was talking about like there's it's kind of like a peacock's tail. Our quest for our evolutionary quest for a higher intelligence has led us down a bottleneck. And perhaps intelligence is not the be-all and end-all of evolution. I mean, where's it put us? Where's it put us right now? In a world which is heading to hell in a handbasket. I'd like to actually have a good look at Lanternese gnomes and Lanternese culture and stuff, but we haven't got a lot of material on Lantern, the island of Lantern. Gnome Barbarian, I love it. I also love the really inventive gnomes as well. Like the gnomes that have invented espresso machines that are also siege weapons. That sort of thing tickles my fancy. Yeah. Illithids and biotech. Good combo. So when you think about it, a lot of the illithid technology being psychic in nature really lends itself to them having living circuitry and stuff. So like when you are trying to hotwire the door to get through out of a prison or something, and you open up a panel and you peel back a skull case and there's brain tissue in there with like leaking fluids and stuff, you're like, ugh. I can't handle this. This is like, what sort of lock-picking skills do you expect me to have here? This thing's a living organism. Like, the door is an orifice. Think of the Wraith ships in Stargate Atlantis. Billions and billions, thank you. In the spirit of playing against type in the Eberron setting, my high-strength gnome is a steel-cable chimpanzee-type buff dude. 120 centimeters, which is tall for a gnome, able to rip a human's arms off. Yeah, one of the videos on RPG Science talked about gnomes and their strength, right? So if you had a gnome with a strength of, say, 16, and they grabbed hold of your face, you could not get them off you. They would be that strong. And they should be able to climb up a wall like nobody's business. Because you've got adult strength in a child-sized body. And that power to weight ratio of a gnome means that they should be able to scale a tree or up the side of a house, no problem. Like if they can grab it and hold on to it, they're just like supremely strong. But compared to like a human trying to clamber up a wall or something, gnomes would just go straight over it. So they should have one hell of a bonus to their athletic skill. That's the bit where the strength score and actual dynamics, the sports dynamics of how that works in the game, is failed by designers of the game not realizing what the actual implications are for a gnome with a strength of 16 or 17. So that's actually how gnomes would be. So that means if you're in a brawl with a gnome and the gnome gets hold of you, like, and manages to grab your arm and your leg and pull them together, you cannot, as an adult human, beat that strength. It's just, you can't do it. And same sort of thing, if a chimpanzee gets hold of your face or your arm or something, they will twist your arm off. They are literally it's impossible to get them off you. No human is strong enough to beat a chimp. This is not helping my anti-gnome bias. Espresso siege machine seems to be popular. You killed my gun. Biopunk, yeah. Illithid biopunk. That's the way. Do we have any other questions about D&D technology, laboratory stuff? This week I've been, as you can see on the community tab and stuff, I've been drawing maps and things on my, basically field testing my my map sheets. And the final few pictures that I'm going to be taking are me essentially proving that they are dishwasher safe. Not only dishwasher safe, but actually washing machine and dryer safe. So you can throw them through the washing machine and dryer. And I'm also going to legitimately be cooking a pizza on one of them with a map on it and everything. So just to show that you can actually, abuse the hell out of these maps. Aiden, thank you. AJ, so I wanted to ask about pushing rule systems to their limit. Do you think that enemy types and groups should lean more towards the style of the Star Spawn, actually meshing move sets instead of just pack tactics? Yes, absolutely. I think that one of the real benefits of 4th edition, for instance, was a lot of the movement and stuff, the tactical stuff was integrated into the listings for the monsters. So I think that the ideal monster listing has got a good balance between the lore, which allows you to build them into your world, build up their presence, and make a bit of mystique around them, so that when you encounter them, it feels like a real event in your gaming life to really encounter this creature for the first time. And the monster listing has given the DM all of the material they need to bring them into the story. So that's divorced from the stats of the creature entirely, almost. Then the stats should be clear and concise and build a lot of options that combine the creature with its environment. So I think in 5th edition, how we've got lair actions and legendary actions and stuff, those are really great. The legendary actions in particular, because they've allowed you to use the creature through the entire round. So they can do things on the player's turns. That makes it very, very interesting. Lair actions, because they tie the environment and make you think about the environment when you're designing the encounter locations for these creatures. So that's really good. We can build many lair actions into the stats for the creatures, even if they're not legendary or lair-based creatures. We can build those tactics and environmental effects into the stat blocks and the movements and special abilities of the creatures that give them a much more dynamic feel. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Oh, Moonring coming in with the sneaky super chat. How strong do you think Anix's Chittle is? Exactly as strong as their stats tell you they are. The one disadvantage they have is they don't have leverage as they're floating around in the water. But I challenge you to grab hold of a slippery dolphin or other such thing and hang on for dear life. They're actually quite strong. Chittles being stingray type creatures, I'm not entirely sure, but they would have, if they are like stingrays and sharks, a toothy sort of sandpapery feel to texture to the outside of their skin, which helps them protect against barnacles and other sort of parasites and things that would latch onto them in the sea. So there you go. Yeah, I agree with you, Sir William, that they would have a psychic technology that would be like almost like an heads-up display type of thing, like a hologram that only they can see. There's some examples of that, I think, in Warhammer 40k in regards to the Administorium and the cogitators and stuff, and they have like a network of, you need certain implants in order to see it. But they can see the data flows and stuff, which is quite interesting. Moonring, thank you. What do you think about undead technologically like Incunabula would be like? What do you think undead technology? Yeah, like in that regard, there's a fine line between undead and a construct, like an undead golem, or like using animated parts to make a creature. So there's a fine line there between a golem and an undead creature, and I'm fine with that. Sometimes it's good to keep the players guessing. Like, imagine if the player who's playing a cleric suddenly found out that they could use turn dead on a siege engine that is being used against their castle, or a creature using a particularly powerful type of like crossbow. The crossbow itself is actually undead, and you could turn the crossbow. So it will not fire at the thing. It will be trying to escape somehow, and it will essentially seize up and not work. So you can really turn it on its head. It could be actually an advantage for player characters, not just a disadvantage, to pull the wool over their eyes like that. Hey, Dice Don't Lie. Thank you. Been watching Invincible. Yeah. And going to run a gory superhero game on my 6th campaign. What superpowers do you want? I'm all about sonic speed. Being able to run at supersonic speed is my go-to pick for superpowers. I love that. Yeah, super speed characters are really cool. The other option would be some sort of a phasing creature that can go through walls and things like that. I quite like that as a superpower as well. But yeah, I've always really liked either flight or being able to run at super speed like the Flash is my go-to. I would always pick that one. A big bad, oh nice Lysander, a big bad in my old school campaign of mine created an actual railgun by clever use of the lightning bolt spell. Yeah. Yeah, if the wizard figures out how magnetism works, and I'm sure they could, then they could probably come up with something like that. Should all monsters then have legendary actions? No, Nikolai, I think all monsters should have the potential of having a legendary member of their kind. Like, what is the granddaddy of all dung beetles? You know, this legendary 1 foot tall dung beetle. It's the biggest dung beetle I've ever seen. Who knows? I mean, in our real world example, we had a legendary crocodile, Nile crocodile, that had some sort of pituitary disorder and it grew to giant size. This is a real thing. And they tried to capture it and it just mangled the cage and then it disappeared somewhere into who knows where. But when they first went to try and find this thing, they almost went straight past it because they thought it was a sandbank. It was that big. So there are legendary creatures out there. So, yeah. And would you call it a dire crocodile? No, it wasn't any particular type of prehistoric crocodile. It was just a crocodile that grew to gigantic size. A giant crocodile. So, yeah. What would a giant displacer beast be like? Would it be more intelligent than your regular displacer beast? Would it have extra powers? You know? Thank you, Morgan. So, giant golem versus dragon would be an offshoot of a gnome kobold war. Could be. In fact, I think there was an encounter. One of the encounters I saw recently somewhere. I think it might have been a homebrew, where you had a bunch of goblins who had built, might have been a kobold. I think it was goblins who built an artificial dragon, just a dragon construct thingy. But it wasn't even a full dragon. It was just like there to intimidate them when some adventurers came around a corner, and the dragon was like, "Roar, I have got you now. Surrender all your valuables, and I won't breathe on you." And it was really just a goblin or a kobold talking into a pipe, and one of them's like throwing flame things out and stuff. Hey, Shakescan. Oh, that jumped forward a bit. Thanks, Zach. Here's another for my own campaign. What do you think of a Netherese artifact that is an AI that helps the party investigate enclaves and old Netheril? I'm all for the idea. One thing I would say is the Netherese had a lot of resources at their beck and call, which allowed them to build magical items that they would use around the house, sort of thing, because they had a magical source that would allow them to power magical items. Kind of like a Wi-Fi based magic system, right? So when you took it away from the Wi-Fi, it would stop working, but when you got it close enough to the Wi-Fi, it would work perfectly well. That's how their mythalas and stuff in their cities worked. So they built a lot of their magical items which functioned in that way. But they were also of highly martial culture that went and invaded places and stuff as well. And it would make sense that they would take along some sort of an AI cogitator type sort of creation. So it would be bulky, possibly portable, maybe existing within its own enclosed extra dimensional space, so you could actually go inside the AI, and it's got a very powerful power source. In Stargate Atlantis, they have those power sources which look like those crystal sort of rod things. I can't remember the name of them, but those are very much like a portable mythalar when you think about it, right? So they slot one of those things in and it powers the entire base sort of thing. Netherese architecture and their technology is very similar to that, where you would take one of these crystal mythalar thingies, plug it into your fallen tower thing, and possibly get the thing to float, or get all of the defense for mechanisms and traps and stuff, and handy dandy assistant thingies and boxes that can turn pills into chickens and all sorts of stuff suddenly working again. So that's my idea. But of course they'll be very, very rare and quite often enclosed in extremely dangerous artifacts like war machines and things like that, or mass weapons of destruction, or they're enclosed in extra dimensional sources that if you take the thing out of the extra dimensional source, it's going to expel you from that extra dimensional space at extreme speed. So you have to be really careful about it. Billions Millions, thank you. On technology topic, that same buff gnome is Da Vinci type artificer. How would you set up a artisanal workshop, mechanical clockwork, forging, role-playing, and game mechanics, downtime activities-wise? So essentially it would give them a bonus to any sort of artifact creation or identification or modification that they'd want to do on their downtime. So it would also allow them to research physical representations of spells. So you'd say, okay, let's say you've got a from first to third level spell that you would normally be able to get as a scroll. They'd be able to go into their workshop and create some sort of a device which functions the same way as the scroll does, and perhaps it recharges. But the amount of resources that would go into creating that would be prohibitively expensive, and they may have to go into quests to get specific components that would tie into your adventure. So you as the DM would work in tandem with your player and say, okay, well, you're heading towards the Tomb of Annihilation, and in this jungle is the purple stemmed orchid that you need to get this to make an unguent which attracts a certain type of moth which has got a crystal in its eye casings. So you need to get 1,000 of those moths in order to create the lens of sea invisibility. And once you have that, you've got a monocle which allows you to use sea invisibility once per day. So, Displacer Beast Lords. Yeah, I was just using it as an example, Nikolai. You'd see that giant crocodile being like, oh, that's so cute. Yeah, you say that now. You don't know what it like. I saw some a video on, I think it was on, I was watching Ridiculousness, and there was this couple just sitting in their pool, minding their own business, completely unaware, and this like crocodile, young crocodile, maybe it was a caiman, went just leaping in, immediately attacked the woman, and just was like trying to attacking them straight away. It was savage. I'm like, far out, man. What was that? It must be Florida. That crocodile must have eaten some baggie that was floating down in the sewage system that was full of drugs or something that somebody had thrown in there. It was hopped up. The record alligator for the state of Louisiana was over 19 feet long. Wow. Alligators are a little bit more chill than crocodiles, in my experience. Like, alligators are just like, whereas crocodiles actively just hunt you. Crocodiles are serious business. The difference between a monster and an animal is typically something that you would encounter on Earth, right? And it could be something like, you see a lot of prehistoric creatures which are sort of represented in Dungeons and Dragons as well. Any sort of like creature, you've got lemur type creatures, you've got eyes, and you've got like aardvark type creatures and stuff. Then you've got like the monstrosities, which is something like the Aurum Vorax or the like Cataplebus those are sort of monstrous. They've got a little supernatural element to them. So monsters are like, you wouldn't have a herd of these things maybe, or something. It's something which is a threat to human beings, whereas animals typically aren't that threatening. Even though lions, when you think about it, are kind of monstrous, and tigers certainly, they're giant cats that hunt people. They're monsters, But in our world, they're animals. And I suppose in the D&D worlds, they're quite often animals as well. Moonring sneaking in another one. Do you mean to tell me there's giant Ixadarchittles? Maybe. Could be. It was caught by the guy that started Tabasco, the Tabasco Sauce Company. Far out. Hey, Reddit Really Entertainer. How tasty would a Warforged be to a Mind Flayer? Would they know not to eat the head? And is there sound in the Far Realm? Yes, there is sound in the Far Realm. Yeah, that's a good point. Mind Flayers wouldn't eat Warforged, would they? Because they've got no brain matter in the same way. In fact, we don't really know what makes the cerebral, what makes Warforged smart. I guess it would be like a wood type substance. Who knows? Let's say mushroom. Let's say mushroom. Network mycelium of mushroom is actually what is the Warforged brain, or some sort of a dry jellyfish. I don't know. Maybe it's different every time. It's probably not clockwork though. That's a good point, actually. I don't know what makes Warforged intelligent, or what houses their intelligence. Andrew, thank you. So, since gnomes are the steampunk inventors in D&D, what kind of technology might dwarves have, since that's usually their lot? Golems. Golems is very much like the runic, and like things that run on elemental power and golems and stuff. Think Blackrock and those other famous dungeons of the dwarves in Warhammer 40k. Oh, not Warhammer, World of Warcraft. I don't often talk about World of Warcraft, but there's a lot of stuff to talk about in World of Warcraft. So, big, giant golem things. Yeah. And stuff like, gunpowder. What else? Siege weapons. So we're talking basic clockwork stuff. A lot of counterweights and counterbalances, like walls and stuff that move. Hydraulics is something that dwarves are very, very skilled at. So, yeah. It's wild watching manatees and alligators hang out. A Babbage difference engine. Warforged brain high in fiber. Yeah, I mean, if they're feeding on the actual, cat is banging on my door. If they're feeding on like more mental energy, I suppose there's some sort of nutrients, sustenance that the Mind Flayers could get from a Warforged brain, but it wouldn't have the physical sustenance. So if they're forced to feed on nothing but Warforged brains, they would get physically degraded. Start flaking around the gills. Moonring, what's your favourite 4th edition monster? Mine's either Incunabula or the Mirage Dragon. The Quam is my favourite 4th edition monster. But also the Mind Flayers of Thune. Which, you can tell which is my favourite monsters because I do like homebrew conversions of them on the D&D Beyond site. Mind Flayer Flumph. It was the Flumph all along. Oh, right. Yeah, that's true, Brian. If AJ's hypothesis is correct that Warforged brain is fungal, then a Lithid could eat them if they can eat fungi like the Oblivax and also the little brain things on feet. Intellect Devourers. Since magic affects spirit, so the magic that creates Warforged uses spells that create a bind operating system which sparks the soul. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe it is just the rune, in fact, which contains their essence. So they are golem-like in that sense. There doesn't have to be a corresponding physical component for all the different organs in a Warforged body. I suppose you're right. Amigo Roberto, I thought you had to go to work. Thank you. I've only got a minute and can't stay too long, but would you consider doing a video on the White Plume Mountains? Yep. I do quite like the idea of doing run-throughs of old modules and stuff. Like having a spoiler at the start of it saying, look, I'm going to be talking about everything that happens in this module, and then basically just run you through exactly what happens in all the different rooms and locations and settings and stuff. So that would be kind of interesting to me, because I'd like to learn about all those different modules. It'd give me a good excuse to collect them all. In your world, Warforged are Sentinel robots, James. Shield golems are more like that for me. They're a little bit more advanced than your average golem, but they're not Warforged, that's for sure. Warforged have got that Gulara stamp of the rune, which provides their soul, so to speak. And that takes it directly from the mythology of where golems came from, in folklore. Dice Don't Lie, thank you. What's your favourite character you've ever gotten to play? At the moment, I would say Snicklegrick, the gnome cleric he's a cross-class gnome rogue, 2 levels of rogue and the rest in cleric. We had to go with dice life domain because Roll20 doesn't like all the different domains that clerics can have. Roll20 has got some limitations, that's for sure. They need some add-ons or something for 5th edition. Honestly, how hard is it? So he's a cleric of Gelf. Who is the twin brother of Gal, Glittergold. And Gelf is like a moody teenager. He causes pain of loss from people, and he's into the destruction of art and beauty and stuff, because it's so it pains dwarves, the gnomes, when things of beauty are smashed and destroyed. And Gelf is kind of like that. Look, they're just things, What's more important is, home and family and stuff, not physical objects. Hey, Green Scythe. Thune was late 3.5. Oh, okay. Thanks, Brian. What do I like about 4th edition stuff then? I'm trying to think. I'm kind of drawing a blank on all the monsters of 4th edition. Giant Mimics was pretty good. Oh, yeah, that's right. Where is that book? I just got the Total Party Kill Bestiary Volume 1, and it's really good. I'm not a huge fan of the artwork throughout most of the book, but that pales in comparison to the setting of all of this. And one of the things they've got is gargantuan-sized mimics and stuff, and greater liches and things. This is high-level stuff. Monsters to challenge veteran players, veteran heroes, I should say. So it's got a lot of shit-kicking, high-level monsters and things in here, and they provide tactics, plot hooks, ecology, treasure, lore, all sorts of information on top of the stat blocks and stuff, and they go through it all. And but providing plot hooks and ecology and tactics as separate settings, separate listings, I should say, is really interesting. Setting separate headings. So it's a really good book, and I would say pick this up. It's from 2C Gaming. I think did I get this as a Kickstarter? It's written by Ryan Service. 2C Gaming, and oh no, this was from Drive-Thru RPG. I can tell because it's from Lightning Source UK. So Drive-Thru RPG, go and pick it up. Highly recommend it. When in doubt, TBK. Did I miss a comment? There it is. Dubai. So I don't usually ask these kind of questions, but why not? At their respective heights, which was more powerful, Imiskar or Netheril? Whoa, it's a tough question. I would say, okay, Imaskar covered more territory, but it was more sparsely covered. They could move an army through the Batraki portals a lot easier than Netheril could. But Netheril could pick up a mountain, flip over the top of it, put a city on top of it, and float it over an area and just rain destruction down on the people down below. So, kind of much of a muchness there. Thankfully, the empires never came into conflict with each other. And really the existence of those eastern empires really prevented Netheril from heading out over the Moon Sea, over the Sea of Fallen Stars and conquering Chicenta and Unther and Mulhorand and all those places. So they never really went to the old empires. They didn't see any need. They had everything they wanted around, High Forest and Cormantha and Cormyr and those sort of places. Tricky question. I think a war between those two empires would have been kind of as destructive as the war of the Elven empires back in the Crown Wars era. We would have seen a lot of destruction and permanent scarring on the land caused by those powers going at it. Also, at that point, the very high level spells such as create volcano and stuff were still around. So they would have literally terraformed the planet and created strings of volcanoes and things in response to aggression against either one, which could have changed the climate of the entire planet. So tricky, hard to say. Netheril was very dependent on their magic, and Imaskar were artificer kings, so they relied on magic and technology. So, yeah, we don't see a lot of Netheril bringing over populations from other planes of existence or other worlds, whereas Imaskar did. So, yeah, Imaskar was closer to becoming a multi-planar, a trans-dimensional society, whereas Netheril was more about focusing on human potential and human power to the extent where they would use the gods as components. So, yeah. Hard to say. Both pretty damn powerful, that's for sure. Good question. Thanks for pointing that out, Moonring. Aiden, thank you. To expand my last question, have you tried making a magic item which has its own rule system, where its power is limited by how it's used by players, not by its rarity? Currently trying myself very hard. Part of the thing that I quite often do to limit it is just tie it in with the character's life force or something, or make the consequences of its use so disruptive and damaging to that player character's long-term longevity, that they resist using it unless they really, really have to. So something that, if you use this magical item, one of your fingers is going to shrivel up and fall off, is kind of visceral, and it reminds that player that there's costs for using these sort of things. Something that curses people around you randomly, that every time you use it, somebody's going to get a serious curse, and it's not you, it's somebody close to you. That sort of thing is how I tie it in. But yeah, having its own rule system, yeah. Every artifact has some sort of element of that, where you never know exactly what it's going to do. Even if you are familiar with the magical artifact, like the Sword of Cass, for instance, it's going to have some random thing to it that the DM just determines at the start of the campaign, and you don't know what it is. So yeah. Dice Don't Lie, that's an interesting question. Thank you for the super chat. Who is your favourite DM in the social climate? Well, aside from my current DM, I don't really watch a lot of streamed games and stuff at the moment. I mean, Matt Colville seems to be very, very popular, but I'm also a very big Jerry Holkins fan of Acquisitions Incorporated, and he seems to not have a lot of problematic elements in his games, and he seems to be very in tune with what the players want. So I would say that Jerry Holkins is probably my favorite DM. Like I travel to PAX and I sit down and I watch their games with rapt interest. So yeah. Mike Mills. I haven't actually seen Mike Mills run any games. I saw him play in one. That's right, yeah. Castus is now a rock. Netheril had at least one spelljammer. Christian, what damaging spell would you expect a drow wizard boss to use in battle? My party is level 6, so that is a factor. Been struggling with this. Fireball. Fireball's a fantastic spell. It's designed to be OP. Other things would be like darkness. Jerry Holkins is legitimately a gifted individual. Like his wordsmithing is pretty next level. He got up in PAX and threw down like a rap poem. So that was pretty cool. Hey Graveyard Shift, you're not too late. Oh no, we're actually past an hour now. Imagine if you would a dark DM. Yeah, exactly. So many quotable things that Jerry says. Yeah, I do actually miss Mike Mills. I don't buy into the propaganda and the cancel culture. I'd quite happily hang out with Mike Mills and talk about D&D, because D&D just, it's the lingua franca of us nerds. No, I didn't see the Dark Dungeons thing, and I don't think we should really glorify the chick track stuff. I mean, it's mockery of the finest kind, but still, it's an old joke for me. Displaceth Chimera? That is a good question. Dahaka4444. Chimeric monsters. Let's see. A cross between a dragon turtle and a hornet's hive. Murder hornets. So draconic murder hornets, whose queen is a mobile fortress. Callum, go for it. It's always better to put those comments into one thing. Like, don't ask me something and then, because I might miss your next question. Why ancient dragons deal non-magical damage? It makes them really weak and not terrifying, as I thought. We were actually just talking about that right before the stream started. And yeah, I'm fully in agreement that dragon breath weapons are magical. They are magical. They always have been. It's built into the lore. You can't just hand wave it and say, no, once the fire leaves their body, it's not magical fire anymore. It's just regular fire. It's not. It's not. It's magical fire. They use dragon fire to forge weapons. They use dragon fire to cast spells. They shape their breath weapon into magical effects. There's a whole shitload. There's a boatload of lore which is associated with dragon breath weapons being magic. They have an organ inside their body which squeezes their blood and extracts elemental power, mixes it with the weave, and boof, they produce this not biologically possible stream of destructive elemental energy that is magical. It's magical from the moment it leaves their their face to the time it hits the target, and it leaves behind a residue that you can go, yep, that was Dragonfire. Nothing burns quite like that. So Crawford saying that Dragonfire is not magical, bollocks. Wrong. I'm sick and tired of that guy taking existing D&D IP and throwing it out the window because of some personal bias that he has. Bullshit. It's bullshit. Like, you've got the entire D&D cartoon, for instance, which a lot of people have nostalgic feelings for, and there was a phoenix bird in there, and now in 5th edition you've got us telling us that a phoenix is an elemental creature. Well, what about that? What about that creature? Huh? Doesn't exist suddenly? Nah. Okay, rant over. The Netherese had spelljammer ships, right? I think they had at least one. Amaska had portals that went to the planes of other planes, and I need to read up, I'm not sure, Amaska video. Yeah, Amaska was more multi-dimensional travel, and the Netherese were more sort of the here and now. But I'm not entirely sure about the spelljammer thingy. Let's see. Slade was doing a lot of the writing for that for Eric Boyd. So Eric was kind of in charge of stuff in the background, I think. But yeah, Slade did a lot of stuff on Amaska, on Netheril. But I don't know how contemporary that was with spelljammer stuff. Ooh, putting me on the spot. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Vessel of Calamity, thank you. If you could listen to the conversation of two creatures or monsters of different types, what two monsters would you choose? This is assuming they are not actively hostile to each other. A hag and a devil. Or a hag and a Yugoloth would be a very interesting conversation. When they're planning something on the prime material plane, would be a very interesting conversation. Like getting into the nitty gritty of what their tactics and real thoughts and stuff are, and their opinions of other creatures. That would be cool. That monster is horrifying using the spelljammer, yeah. Frost Giant turning into an everlasting one and forming an army. I want to... Oh! One Eye of Grumsh. Can you be a follower of both Vaprak and Grumsh? Yes, you can. I don't know the difference between hornets and wasps, Sir William. I don't actually know. Yeah. Thanks, Nice Don't Lie. D&D is D&D therapy for you? My players continuously say that's OP, to which I tell them, you're all OP. Yeah, it definitely is. Yep, absolutely. D&D is my main social outlet, really. Like, if I'm sitting at, like, case in point, I was at my sister's birthday party the other day, having a great time, but I was just sort of sitting in the corner quietly because there was only, like, I started up this conversation with this guy from Brazil, and he started talking about Vampire the Masquerade being the main role-playing game that they play there, and we got into a lively conversation about Vampire the Masquerade, because that's the sort of person I am. If you're not talking about D&D or some sort of role-playing game, I ain't got nothing to talk about, really. I'm not a low-level conversation person. I'm a high-level conversation person. So you either talk to me about particle physics or biology or latest technology or smartphone apps or something like that. But I'm not interested in, like, chit-chat. Like, I'm not interested in conversations about your car, or... Hell, I'll even talk about cooking. I'll talk about cooking with somebody. But yeah. Quite often, people's conversations about their jobs, for instance, boring. So boring. Makes me sound like a terrible person, but that's just the way it is. I'm very interesting in very specific ways. I'm not a generally interesting person. Yeah, Planescape is mind-blowing. All right, it's time for me to go, everybody. Fawkes from Harry Potter novels is a perfect example of a phoenix, AJ. Agree or disagree? Agree. Yep, a dragon that can breathe out a fire elemental that stays on the field of battle. Yes, potentially. Small talk is terrible, I agree. I will not bend the knee to small talk. Okay. You got my Ryuden, you've got my attention there. If your car runs on a fusion generator, yeah, I'm interested. Okay. I'll talk about hybrid cars. Grimhild, you know, if I'm just standing next to you at a party, you don't know. Like, you look at me, I don't look like I'm that into like interesting things. Honestly, I don't give off the impression of being an interesting person when you see me just standing there. It's only because you know me and what I talk about. All right. Fare thee well. All have a good week. Hopefully the next time I see you, my Kickstarter will be live. So please go and also check out the link down below for D&D WoW dice. They are associated with this Kickstarter as well, so they will be contributing some dice sets, including a specific Mind Flayer-esque type dice, which we can't really call a Mind Flayer dice, but it's definitely a Mind Flayer dice. That's going to be part of the Kickstarter as well, and the stretch goals. So yeah, I can confirm that the pledge for the large battle mat, the character sheet, the battle combat tracker, and the canvas bag, which is the basic pledge, will be $40 US. Shipping will be determined at the end of when all your stuff is being sent out. Shipping will be determined then, not part of the pledge price, because we don't know all the other extra stuff you're going to be buying as well, because you can buy extra battle mats and stuff like that. Once you've pledged, you can buy additional mats and stuff. So yeah. Okay, catch you later.